Evil West took me back a decade, and this might have been the best part about it. Maybe in the past couple of years the age of open world games has slowed down a little bit, and that's a good thing. FOMO is a feeling a lot of gamers like me are familiar with, and the fact that we can't play everything is difficult to accept. Here's where games like these stand out. Compared to other generations of consoles, the PS5 era has not satisfied me in terms of content so far. There are not enough true PS5 games out there even almost 4 years after its launch. I am sure COVID is still at fault here as well, but it's 2024 and I find myself craving a PS3 experience a little bit too often. I've been enjoying going back to older games like Red Dead Redemption or God of War. These games are my favorite franchises of all time, and maybe they have something to do with the fact that I love this game so much. Evil West takes the Wild West setting and throws in a good old combat system full of different weapons and a lot of bloody deaths that reminded me of the first adventures of our beloved Kratos. There's not much exploring to do here. You can't lose yourself in this world. You can only focus on what you have in front of you. The objective is clear: kill everyone and everything. One aspect of this game can take your focus away from your goals: collectibles. Much like Alan Wake, for example, this 15-hour game contains over 300 items to collect. Luckily, most of what you collect will turn out to be useful for upgrading your weapons and playstyle, while other things will just stimulate your curiosity into exploring the background of Evil West. All in all, I really enjoy a 15-hour game from time to time, just for the fact that I can move on to the rest of the list of games I would need 2 lifetimes for. Finishing a game is one thing, enhancing your experience with it is a completely different story. I used to play games on easy mode only, just because I thought I wouldn't have what it takes to get through it on hard mode, or maybe because I just didn't want to turn it into a task rather than a hobby. Gamers are different. We all enjoy different things and have a different perspective on how to approach something. After a few years of playing a large variety of video games, I started exploring and difficulty turned from foe to friend. Evil West is difficult, but the game tricked me into thinking it wasn't. We're not talking Souls-like difficult. Nothing can be compared to that kind of experience. Focus here is key. The first time I played the game on normal, and my experience was very balanced. I died a few times, especially towards the end, but never really had too much trouble. I had a good time from start to finish. Then I moved on to New Game Plus on Evil difficulty, and this is where my mind was tricked. Recently, I played the Callisto Protocol. New Game Plus in this game works in the way it's supposed to be for survival horror games. If you finish the story on normal, New Game Plus is only available on normal. Otherwise, that will make a playthrough on a harder difficulty a little bit pointless, which is what I thought was the case. In Evil West, the first 11 chapters of the game were a walk in the park. I tore enemies apart and breezed through the levels as if there were no chance of dying at all. However, getting through the later missions was no joke. I was way overpowered at the beginning. I had weapons and upgrades I almost never used in my first playthrough, as I got hold of them too late in the story. Chapter 12 destroyed me, and so did the next 4 until I got to the end of the story. Despite that, I believe that was the point. Evil difficulty is not a joke, and managing to get through it without losing my mind was very satisfying in the end. Now, I can only imagine how it would have been playing from the start on the hardest settings, and I am sure I'll be happy to revisit this game in a few years and give myself another challenge. Not every great game has epic boss fights in them, but it wouldn't make sense if some didn't. This is the case of Evil West. The little fight's purpose is to prepare you for what's to come, and it's up to you to be ready for the final showdown. As you learn the mechanics and start developing your playstyle, you come across the first boss fight of the game about halfway through the story. The Parasiter gives you a good taste of what's to come, as it is definitely the easiest among the 4 bigger challenges you face during your adventure. I beat this massive beast on my first try on normal difficulty, but I wasn't bored by it. I felt like the challenge was exactly the way it was supposed to be, perfectly balanced. By the time you get to the Bruch in chapter 10, you start having more upgrades for your weapons and familiarity with the tools, which takes this fight to a slightly higher level. You start dying a little more, but not in a frustrating way, rather in a satisfying manner. William Rentier is next up, and even though it's the only non-beast boss fight, he was definitely the hardest one for me. His movements were very fast, and some of the attacks he threw at me took me off guard. Felicity Dabano, the main antagonist to our hero, transforms into her true form to try and bring you down once and for all. Her shape and attacks reminded me very much of the cleric beast in Bloodborne. After a few tries, however, you learn pretty quickly how she moves and combines crushing attacks that can end your life in a couple of hits. On evil difficulty though, boss fights were not the hardest challenges to overcome. Taking on hordes of enemies at once was very difficult for me. The grand finale has you face big arenas full of multiple waves of enemies that can give you a hard time. After all, a boss fight is just one beast, so you only have to focus on one enemy's attacks. Big arenas have you split your focus into at least 3 or 4 different moves from multiple sources at the same time. Consider yourself warned. This is what I define as a pleasant and balanced trophy list. Beat the game on the hardest difficulty. Collect only the things that would turn out to be useful for your enjoyment. Defeat bosses in ways you wouldn't care to do if no one told you so. Evil West takes inspiration from many video games that did things right in previous generations and puts them together in an era in which a lot of gamers feel nostalgic for the good old days. Eternal Blood.